Picture Marcelo Bielsa, one of the most respected football minds on the planet. Two-time World Cup winners Uruguay under his command, sitting motionless on his Powerade box as 8 minutes of stoppage time tick away. And on the other side of the pitch, dancing, defending like their lives depend on it, celebrating every clearance like a goal. A team from a cluster of 10 tiny islands in the middle of the Atlantic that most people watching could not find on a map. A nation of 500,000 people, smaller than the city of Bristol, taking points off a country that has won this entire tournament twice, the Underdogs making history. That is the image of this World Cup. And it is FIFA's absolute worst nightmare, because FIFA did this to themselves. So let's talk about how the Underdogs hijacked this tournament, and why the people running it are quietly terrified. Start with why these tiny teams are even here, because that's where the irony begins. FIFA blew this World Cup up from 32 teams to 48, 12 groups of 4, 104 matches instead of 64. And the reason was never romance. It was money. More teams means more games means more broadcast deals, more tickets, more sponsorship, more of everything that fills FIFA's bank account. The expansion was sold to the world as making football truly global, opening the door to nations that had never had a shot, places like Cape Verde and Curacao. But here's the cynical part, the part FIFA will never say out loud. They never actually expected those small teams to do anything. The quiet business logic was simple. Let the minnows show up, sell the feel-good story, get beaten by the big boys, fill out the bracket, and then politely exit, so that the giants, the nations with the massive television audiences and the deep, bankable markets, could march on toward the latter rounds where the real money lives. A Spain versus Brazil quarterfinal prints cash. A Cape Verde versus Curacao knockout tie does not. More games for the money? Then the giants go deep for the money. That was the plan. The plan lasted about 90 minutes. Because on day one, Cape Verde, the Blue Sharks, a team playing the first World Cup match in their history, walked out against Spain, the reigning European champions. The team that artificial intelligence and pundits alike had picked to win the whole tournament. Pedri, Lamine Yamal, Rodri, a squad stacked with Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Manchester City. And Cape Verde, powered by their 40-year-old goalkeeper Vozinha, making 7 saves, held them to a scoreless draw. Spain could not break down a team ranked nowhere near them, playing their debut. The world shrugged. Fluke. Spanish rustiness. They will fade. Then came Game 2, and the fluke theory died completely. Because against Uruguay, 2-time world champions, 15-time Copa America winners, a squad featuring stars from Real Madrid, Manchester United, and Tottenham, Cape Verde didn't park the bus and pray. They went for the throat. 20 minutes in, Kevin Pina lined up a free kick 28 yards out. The Uruguayan wall inexplicably split, and his shot screamed past the veteran Muslera. Cape Verde's first goal in World Cup history, and they were leading. In the stands, the goalkeeper's mother, who had feared she couldn't even afford the visa to be there, watched her son's team beat the aristocracy of world football. And the coach, a man called Bubista, dressed in blue denim and a t-shirt, was out coaching the great Bielsa. Uruguay hit back with 2 soft goals to lead 2-1, and that should have been that. The natural order restored. Except Cape Verde refused to read the script. Off a Uruguayan defensive horror show, Helio Varela stole in and stroked home the equalizer, his first ever goal for his country, then led his teammates in a celebratory dance while Bielsa sat frozen. 2 apiece. 8 minutes of stoppage time, and it was Cape Verde, the Islanders, finishing on the front foot. Bielsa afterward could only admit his team was, in his words, disorganized, and that Uruguay, being the better squad now, had to actually be shown. They are two-time world champions facing elimination, and a team from 500,000 people did that to them. So who even are these guys? Cape Verde is an archipelago of 10 islands, 600 kilometers off the West African coast, with a population just over 500,000 and a diaspora of roughly the same size living in the United States, which is conveniently exactly where their group games are being played. They qualified the hard way, opening with a draw against Angola, getting demolished 4-1 by Cameroon, and then winning 7 of their last 8 to finish top of their group, above Cameroon, the 5-time African champions. Their squad is a beautiful patchwork of the diaspora, 26 players from 25 clubs in 14 countries, with more players born in Rotterdam than in their own capital. And now, after 2 games, a single win over Saudi Arabia would send them into the knockout rounds of a World Cup they had never even reached before. The story went from nice to be here to can they survive the group to wait, how far can these guys actually go? And Cape Verde isn't even the only one, because the other half of FIFA's nightmare is a team with the opposite story entirely. Curaçao, a Caribbean island of about 156,000 people off the coast of Venezuela, the smallest nation by population and by land area ever to qualify for a World Cup in the tournament's 96-year history. To put that in perspective, the stadium hosting the final holds more than half of Curaçao's entire population. And in their opening match, they were annihilated 7-1 by Germany. For one glorious afternoon, that was the headline FIFA's critics had been waiting for. See, the 48-team format is a farce. These teams don't belong, and the World Cup is being watered down. And then, 6 days later, Curaçao went out and held Ecuador, a team packed with Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain defenders, to a 0-0 draw. The hero was a 37-year-old goalkeeper named Eloy Room, a man who had spent most of his career on the bench, who made 15 saves, the most by any keeper in 90 minutes of World Cup football since records began in 1966. One single save short of the all-time record that needed extra time to set. The King and Queen of the Netherlands watched from the stands. The Queen reportedly kissed Room in the dressing room afterward. Their 78-year-old coach, the oldest manager in World Cup history, wept at the final whistle and said they had come from nothing and fought like lions. Room joked he deserves a statue back home. And one commentator summed up the sheer absurdity of it perfectly. A boulder in the sea has a point at the World Cup. So here's the contrast that's torturing FIFA. Cape Verde, the fearless debutantes who look like they genuinely belong. Curaçao, the tiny team that got humiliated and then refused to disappear. 2 completely different stories, both pointing at the same conclusion. The small teams are not filling space. They're stealing points, wrecking reputations, and crashing the knockout conversation. And the format FIFA designed for profit is what's making it possible. Because in this 48-team setup, the top 2 from each group advance, plus the 8 best third-place teams, which means an underdog doesn't even need to win their group or finish second to survive. 1 shock draw, 1 clean sheet, 1 heroic goalkeeping display, and suddenly you're in the bracket. FIFA built a tournament with more doors than ever before, and the minnows are walking straight through every single one. This is the controversy FIFA never saw coming. They expanded for money, on the assumption that the giants would go deep and the small teams would go home. Instead, look at who's actually in trouble. The pre-tournament dark horse, Turkey, is already eliminated. Belgium, with its golden generation, is staring down an early exit. Uruguay, 2-time world champions, are in genuine jeopardy, and it's the islands that are climbing. FIFA wanted the Giants. It's getting the giant killers. That's the nightmare. Not that the format failed, but that it worked too well for exactly the wrong people. Every round one of these tiny nations survives is a round a bigger, richer, far more bankable country goes home instead. And honestly, it's the best thing that's happened to this whole messy tournament. After the empty seats, the insane ticket prices, the visa chaos, the VAR meltdowns, the referee held at the border, the Underdogs are the one pure, joyful thing FIFA accidentally created. And history tells you exactly why they matter so much. This is the most exclusive trophy in all of sport. In 92 years, only 8 nations have ever won the World Cup, and only 13 have ever even reached a final. The Giants almost always win in the end. But the underdog run is the soul of the whole thing. Costa Rica in 2014 dumped into a group with 3 former champions, Uruguay, Italy, and England, and topping it, sending Italy and England home. Morocco in 2022, the first African and Arab nation to reach a semi-final, knocking out Spain, Portugal, and Belgium on the way. South Korea reaching the last 4 in 2002. Croatia, a country of barely 4 million, twice reaching a final and a semi-final. These runs are why we watch. They're the reason the World Cup is the greatest show on earth. So let's put the whole thing together, because the irony is almost too perfect. FIFA built a bigger World Cup to squeeze more money out of the Giants, and accidentally constructed the greatest stage for giant killers the tournament has ever seen. The exact teams they expected to fill space and quietly leave are the ones stealing the show, and quite possibly the knockout spots. Cape Verde, 500,000 people, are 90 minutes from the last 32. Curaçao, a boulder in the sea, have a point on the board and a goalkeeper asking for a statue. And every step they take forward, a bigger, glossier, more profitable nation packs its bags and flies home. That is FIFA's worst nightmare. And it might just be the best thing about this entire World Cup. So who is your underdog? Are you riding with the Blue Sharks all the way to the knockouts? Or do you think the Giants claw it back before the group stage ends? Drop it in the comments. And subscribe if you want World Cup coverage that roots for the little guy and follows the money at the same time.